Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to the Fnaf lore reaction. The last video I done this like a day ago. It's 100 views already, so let's go straight into this. If you guys want to see more, I know you guys want to see more because it's freaking blowing up that video, but like and subscribe. Wait, what? Just stay tuned.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory and page 20 of our final Fnaf timeline. It's ridiculous. Last time we covered William Afton's rise as a serial killer, how the loss of his young son in 1983 caused him to make one fateful promise that would ultimately serve as his driving force for decades. I will put you back together. Fueled by grief and obsession, Afton would lose himself in work and drinks. One night in a fit of rage, he lashes out against Henry's young brother Charlie, his first murder. This moment becomes the first domino to fall in a long sequence of events that ultimately destroys William's life and the lives of those around him. That one murder gives Afton a taste for blood, resulting in the deaths of 10 more children across 2 different pizzerias. Those children go on to possess animatronics, giving Afton his first exposure to Remnant and the potential solution for bringing his son back to life. The need to learn more about this miraculous power leads him to produce the Funtime animatronics, as well as their capture devices, robots designed to bring kids to him for experimentation and collection of more Remnant. Except there was one thing that he didn't account for: his daughter's curiosity. He made the robots too appealing, and it would cost him Elizabeth's life. Now with 2 children put back together, Afton was more desperate and crazed than ever, returning to defunct pizzerias to steal the possessed metal still living inside their walls. What he didn't account for, though, were the ghosts, forcing him to pay for the sins of his past. When last we left him, William was spring-locked, bleeding to death behind a secret wall. Gone, but certainly not forgotten, as we're about to see in today's video. Today we're finishing up chapter 2 of our story, wrapping up the Afton era. Over the next 6 pages, we switch our focus to the other main character of the franchise, Mike, a young boy dealing with the fallout of a stupid childhood decision with tragic consequences. A young man whose life is best described as collateral damage, caught in the blast radius of William's whirlwind of destruction. Now, before we begin, let me just rip off the band-aid now. We won't be finishing the timeline today. I know, I'm sorry, I wanted to, but covering Fnaf VR, AR, and Security Breach wound up taking me an additional 9 pages of script. And I've already made you wait long enough for this part, so I just had to make the executive call to break this one up into 2. Don't worry, that part is already written, it is already recorded, it is just in the process of being edited. It is a hefty episode. So mark it on your calendar, that one's actually going to be going live on March 25th. It's also coming complete with a live talkback where we go back over everything from the past couple episodes, as well as having ourselves some very special guests. So overall, that one should be a lot of fun. Fair warning though, the conclusions we've reached that solve Security Breach, whew, they are controversial. I feel good about them. Like, I think that we've locked in on a lot of the answers here, but whoa, they're gonna raise a lot of discussion. Let's just say that you're either gonna love that episode or hate it. I don't really think there's gonna be much in between on that one. Anyway, without any further ado, let's cover a chunk of the timeline that's a lot less controversial. Let's meet Mike. William still wasn't back. Weird. Michael knew his father sometimes traveled for work, disappearing for days on end, but usually there was some sort of notice, a phone call, a post-it, something. It's not like Michael and his father were close, far from it, but as a household of 2 suffering men coping with years of tragedy and loss, there was at least some element of communication between the 2 of them. They were united by a name and a shared pain. This time though, things felt different. William had left nothing. His absence was longer. There were no check-ins, no updates, just silence. Something had happened. If there was one thing Michael knew about his father, it was that he had contingencies, safety checks, backup plans. His father was a careful and guarded man. He held his cards close to his chest, and as such, William had prepared him in the event that something like this ever happened. Normally, his father kept his home office locked, but in the event of an unexpected, prolonged absence, Michael had been instructed to enter his father's office and look behind an empty set of shelves mounted in the corner of the room. Rolling his eyes, Michael entered the office. Never fully understood how William was able to spend so many hours of his days locked up in here. There was just nothing to do. Most of this place was empty. He dragged himself over to the shelf in the corner, expecting to find an emergency contact list, a family safety deposit box. But what he actually found there was completely unexpected.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be.
The shelf swung open and revealed a giant industrial elevator, one that led—
Yeah, Mom? So high up that I reached the sky.
straight down into an underground bunker. But that was impossible. Hidden inside his childhood home was a secret entrance to an enormous underground science lair? It didn't make any sense. Seriously, it didn't make any sense. And yet here it was, mapped directly underneath the floor plan of the house that he'd grown up in, lost his brother in, been tortured in. Michael thought that he'd known his father, a prideful, sad, angry man with petty everyday problems, but clearly he'd been living with a stranger this entire time. His father had secrets. Suddenly the days of William being locked inside of his office made sense. He'd been here the entire time. Where was here though? Was this Circus Baby's entertainment and rentals? The Circus Baby restaurant always did seem to be a deeply personal project for father. A failure of his that cut unusually deep, especially after that first location had to be closed prematurely due to the gas leaks. After that day, father really did seem to change, to lose himself.
A lot of people don't know this, but YouTube has a new royalty program that can pay you every single week, even if you don't ever create any of your own YouTube videos or even start your own YouTube channel. This is because with this new program, you can actually make money from other people's
even more in his work. Clearly the entrance he had found was some sort of secret back way into the facility, one that required crawling through vents to navigate. His father had been working here, but in secret. Why? And that's when he found her. At the end of the facility, Circus Baby, his father's pride and joy. Except something was different about her. She wasn't like the others. The way she talked, the stories she told. This wasn't just a robot. She was alive somehow. And not only was she alive, she also felt familiar.
There is something bad inside of me. I'm broken. I can't be fixed. Will you help me?
Was this his sister? William's baby girl? But how? Why? What was this place? He dug around some old files and found blueprints outlining the features of these animatronics. Storage containers, voice mimicking, parental tracking. And was that a child in Freddy's stomach? Was his father collecting and experimenting on kids? Were all the rumors that he'd heard throughout his past actually true? That the animatronics came to life at night? That there were murders done in all the pizzerias? That his father had somehow been the prime suspect in all of it? Suddenly, Michael's mind flashed back to his persistent nightmares throughout his childhood. Had he been experimented on too? Tears stung in his eyes as anger, fear, and confusion filled his body. His father's secrets were pouring out. William wasn't just a lame, overworked father. He was a monster, toying with life itself. Suddenly, everything clicked. He frantically looked around the room, blinking human heads on poles staring back at him. Green eyes, his sister. Blue eyes, his brother. Closed eyes, his mom. All just staring expectantly. These were meant to be human. William was working down here trying to make believable humans, literally rebuilding the family that they had both lost. The small little girl robots with their British accents roaming the hallways of this underground facility suddenly took on a whole new context.
Oh.
Were those meant to be his sister? A replacement for her? A clone? Was William building clones of his sister? They seemed to know him, after all, to react to his presence.
They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you.
He always did have a bit of a resemblance to his father. Michael's mind reeled as the reality of his world crumbled to dust. No, he had to get them out of there. If this really was his sister, heck, if any of these things were human, souls, whatever remnant of the humans that they once were, they needed to be rescued.
They always put us back inside. There's nowhere for us to hide here.
Led by the voice of Circus Baby, he marched through the now empty halls of the Funtime Auditorium. He would lead them. He would protect them. And finally, he would be able to forgive himself for the killing of his brother so many years.
Bro.
My name is Squidward.
Please put us back inside. There's nowhere for us to hide.
Led by the voice of Circus Baby, he marched through the now empty halls of the Funtime Auditorium. He would lead them. He would protect them. And finally, he would be able to forgive himself for the killing of his brother so
Not the scooping room. Not the scooping room, bro.
You are in the scooping room now. The scooper only hurts for a moment.
Scooper? That violent extraction arm? Michael had seen that one in the pile of blueprints. Something about heat rendering the magical silver metal inside useless. In reality, prior to getting himself spring-locked and put behind the wall, William's methods had become increasingly sophisticated, with a mechanized arm that could infuse new bodies with a soul. William could finally give and take away life. The only thing he needed were the bodies. But William wasn't the only one looking for bodies, as Michael was about to learn.
But if we looked like you, then we could hide. If we looked like you, then we would have somewhere to go.
Michael was going to be the hero to help these animatronics, all right. He was going to help the haunted tubes and wires of these animatronics escape, just not in the way that he anticipated. His sister had lied to him. Another game of pretend. The scooper plowed forward, digging its extraction arm into his body. As he heard his bones ripping through his flesh, Michael blacked out.
Something is wrong with me.
No.
I should be dead, but I'm not.
For the next several months, Michael's life was not his own. He was forced to comply with a tangle of wires and spirits that lived inside of him. His body felt like an overfilled balloon begging to burst as day by day, week by week, his flesh began to sag and discolor. He was a walking, talking, rotting corpse. Alive, but wishing he wasn't. He was a puppet, a walking shell. And while he did his best to conceal his fate, there was only so much a man filled with robot spaghetti could do. The entity in his innards would eventually leave, but by that point, the damage had been done. His decaying flesh stank, turning him into a literal purple guy. But still, even with no bones, with rotting purple flesh and begging to die, Michael continued to live. That silvery metal remnant injected by the scooper meant that he couldn't die. His anger also refused to die. What he had seen down there in his sister's location had rocked him to his core. His father had killed and captured dozens. His experiments had killed his sister and then tortured him throughout all his childhood. He was actively trying to build human replicants. He didn't know where his father was, but Michael knew that he was out there somewhere.
I've been living in shadows. There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you.
Michael had to correct for the sins of his father. He had to make things right. Michael would burn Fazbear Entertainment to the ground. I mean, what else could you do when your skin was permanently purple? Michael's strategy was simple. He would apply for night security guard positions at the old defunct pizzeria locations. That way, no one ever had to see him or smell him during his shift. And all these old, shuttered locations did need guards. Teenage vandals and squatters were always looking to get inside these abandoned buildings, and yet no one ever really wanted to work an overnight graveyard shift unless they were practically out of options. Enter Mike. One by one, he would take on the job of security guard, changing his name each time to ensure that no one was able to follow his paper trail. Once inside, he could tamper with the animatronics and figure out how they worked, writing about his experiences in his security logbook. While there, he would listen to the old tapes where upper management awkwardly welcomed new recruits to their summer jobs, even though he was working there nowhere near the summer months. He heard the gory details of his father's franchise from the outsiders looking in, confused and afraid about what was happening in the walls around them. Sometimes he would see his brother in the form of the Golden Freddy suit. It's me appearing on the walls around him. Except now, there was something else there. He was no longer alone. Another angrier presence was also in the suit, as if two spirits were forced to share the same body. And Golden Freddy would attack him now. It was aggressive. Its vengeance wanted to lash out at anyone with the Afton name, anyone who wore a security guard outfit. Over time, Mike worked his way through the old restaurants, the original pizzeria, the bigger, better Freddy Fazbear's. He spent weeks there looking for clues as to his father's whereabouts, and each time at the end of his week's shift, he would then set the location on fire. Remnant can't survive high temperatures after all. So burning away whatever spirit-laden animatronics that still existed inside seemed like a winning strategy. All this revisiting of his past, though, was causing the nightmares to begin again. Hallucinations that brought him back to his childhood. The guilt around killing his brother. His dreams were oddly mixed with the shrill phone calls of the security guards. But it would all be worth it in the end. The goal was to eventually stumble across the one location, the one job that would finally reunite him with his father. Little did Mike know that that day would come sooner than he expected. 2023, an advertisement came across Mike's TV. Fazbear Frights, a new horror attraction inspired by the awful crimes that occurred around Freddy Fazbear's Pizza some years ago. It made Mike sick. People looking to make a quick buck off the tragedy of others, off his own family. This wasn't a joke or entertainment. Regardless, he had to be a part of it. If this team was combing through his family's history, they might stumble across something that could be useful. And if his father was truly still alive as he suspected, there would be no way that he wouldn't show up here. Maybe finally, this could be the final chapter in his family's marathon of tragedy. Mike applied for the job and was immediately handed the keys. Years of doing this had taught him that security guards rarely receive thorough security checks. They also liked how creepy Mike looked. They thought it was a costume, on theme for the job. What little they knew.
Hey, glad you came back for another night. I promise it'll be a lot more interesting this time.
For weeks, there was nothing. But just as Mike considered giving up, he received the call that he'd been waiting for years.
You're not gonna believe this. We found one. A real one.
Could this finally be him? Sure enough, there he was. William inside his iconic golden Bonnie Springtrap suit. Only now it was
Springtrap!
Decaying with age. And there they were.
Huh?
A small family of broken...
Nothing. present office.
Men finally reunited.
What's up?
A long time, Dad.
Yeah.
He had always struggled with the phantoms of his past haunting him, but now all the animatronics he'd encountered over the past months, hopping from pizzeria to pizzeria, suddenly sprang to life. Their burned faces haunted him as he tried to keep track of his father on the cameras. It would seem that William's mere presence had put the spirits on high alert. Ultimately, they were harmless, more annoying than anything else, but there was one that felt different from the others, one that was more than just a mere phantom. The security puppet. If he looked at the cameras at just the right moment, he could see it floating there through the halls. He could even see its reflection in the water pooled on the ground. It would seem like he wasn't the only one there on a mission. While he was dealing with Springtrap, Michael assumed that this one was likely dealing with the spirits of this place, finally setting them to rest. Hopefully this will be a happier day for all of us, Mike thought to himself. And in that moment, he felt the air around him release, like pressure being let out of a bottle. The building sighed, as if 5 spirits had finally been allowed to move on. He had the sense that his brother was a part of them. He rigged the wiring inside the building to misfire, and the dry, desiccated walls erupted in flames. It is finished.
Bro.
Ho ho there.
Except
Bro.
it was not. Somehow, through sheer force of will, Afton remained. He had survived, and Mike would need to find a new way of finishing off his father. Luckily, the solution would present itself later that year. Not from Mike, but from another victim that had been left in his father's wake.
You're talking about becoming a Fazbear Entertainment franchisee. Restaurant ownership and management. Something almost anyone can do with a limited degree of success. You are now the face of the newly rebranded Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
Fazbear Entertainment as a brand had been closed for years. William had been stuck in a suit and a wall. The only person who legally could bring the franchise back was Henry, but he'd largely pulled out of the franchise around the time of his father's disappearance. Something was up. Surely this had to be some kind of a trick, right? Mike, doing what he did best, applied for a franchise and immediately got the job. There was just one thing out of the ordinary. Paragraph 4.
If you are playing this tape, that means that not only have you been checking outside at the end of every shift, as you were instructed to do, but also that you have found something that meets the criteria of your special obligations under paragraph 4.
No employment contract he'd ever signed required him to keep special lookout for independently moving animatronics outside the restaurant. Now he knew something was up here. Henry was luring them all back. Rather than trying to go to them, like Mike had done for years, Henry was doing the opposite. He was putting them all under the same roof. He was finishing them off for good. Mike knew this wasn't meant to be a restaurant. It was meant to be a prison, a containment vessel, a locked box meant to trap them all in so they could finally end the madness. It took a few nights, but eventually everyone was there. His father, the puppet, the robot spaghetti that had once violated his body, and his sister, now hopelessly devoted to serve the man that had once gotten her killed. It was time. He had been instructed to seal the doors and leave, but while he locked everything down, he didn't move on. If this was truly meant to be the end, if the remnant needed to be washed away, he needed to be a part of that.
This is where your story ends. And to you,
No.
volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend.
And with that, it was over. The Afton legacy died with all of them trapped inside of a literal box. As the flames danced around the office, Mike, for the first time in decades, was happy. But William wasn't gone yet. Although the darkest pit of hell was open and waiting for him, something or someone wouldn't allow him to move on. Instead, he found himself locked in moments from his past. The pizzeria, his son's room, his underground bunker. It was as if his brain's neurons were all firing at once, overloaded, mixing and matching all his biggest fears, regrets, failures. What was this place? How did he get here? He called out in silence.
Hey, yo.
Then they started coming. Without warning, animatronics, both new and old, began to jump out at him, bite him, rip him limb from limb. The pain was immeasurable. Make it stop. Make it stop. William, for the first time, longed for death, an end to this torture. Just as it felt like he couldn't take it anymore, everything was quiet again. It was as if the world had been reset. There was a brief moment of quiet, and then the onslaught began again. Dozens of faces from his past all focused on him. A waking nightmare that he couldn't escape from. More pain, more ripping. It was his own personal hell, but why? Why couldn't he just die? And then he saw them, a group of characters he never thought he'd see again. Those janky, stolen characters that had started everything. The mediocre melodies. It had all started to go wrong once they showed up. Once Henry had made them. But mixed in with their obnoxious southern drawls, William heard something else. It was barely a whisper, but he could just make out the words.
He tried to release you. He tried to release us. But I'm not gonna let that happen. I will hold you here. I will keep you here. No matter how many times they burn us.
That voice. He knew that voice, but from where?
Yo.
The one he shouldn't have killed. William thought back. He'd done a lot of awful things, but there was always the one that stood out. Not Charlie, his drunken act of revenge. Not Susie, his first true murder, no. Instead, it was the one that he had lost control with. The one that he had broken beyond repair for no good reason other than because he could. The one that he'd stuffed inside the golden bear that his partner used to wear. Cassidy. They were back, and now they were trying to punish him, to make him suffer like he'd made them suffer. It was almost like William and Cassidy's souls had been locked together, fused by a collective rage and spite, each refusing to move on. But while Cassidy was so focused on taking revenge, they actually did the one thing that would be the downfall for so many others. They kept William alive. Even though fire should have destroyed the remnant that was coursing through his being, Cassidy kept William breathing, paving the way for his escape. William's will was so strong, his soul so powerful that he managed to put a part of himself inside the circuitry that housed the spring-locked suit. And there, his consciousness lay, inside a single circuit board, waiting for someone to find him and set him free. A person that no one would suspect. Okay, so a bit of a shorter chunk, but an important one as we shift perspectives to Mike and tell his side of the story. And with FNAF VR, AR, and Security Breach having so much to explain, I didn't want to rush through things by trying to cram it all in here. Don't worry, I know you've all been patient. The final video is happening on March 25th. That is locked. It is getting ready to go. Trust me, I want this thing to be over and done with as much as you. I am not just stretching it out for the views. But before we wrap up for the day, I did want to talk about the big Orville elephant in the room, Mike's quest for revenge. You might have noticed that I was vague about the dates, and there's a good reason for that. I don't know them. There is no good way for me to make them fit in. Here's what I do know. We know with a high amount of certainty that Michael Afton is the character that we play as up until Ultimate Custom Night. Mike Schmidt and Fritz Smith, the security guards for FNAF 1 and FNAF 2 respectively, get fired for, quote, tampering with the animatronics and Odor. So weird connection between the two of them, right? But now, there are phantom animatronics that are haunting us in FNAF 3. They use models from both FNAF 1 and FNAF 2, meaning whoever is sitting in that security guard chair, Fazbear Frights, they have to have seen both locations and their animatronics. And that's not all. Their designs are burnt. It's a weird detail in the game, and it's something that the character encyclopedia repeatedly calls attention to. The burned texture for these phantom animatronics. Why is that so unusual, though? Fazbear Frights is the first time in the franchise that we hear about anything burning down. From that point on in the story, it's like the characters turn pyro and are suddenly setting fires left and right. But for the first 3 games, nothing ever catches fire. The animatronics are just moved or repurposed in some way. So when did they burn? And why would our security guards see them as being burned? Someone has to have been going location to location, setting these places on fire, purging the sins of the past. We know we're definitely playing as Mike and sister location in FNAF 6 based on the in-game dialogue. And in FNAF 4, there's an Easter egg where we can hear the phone call from night 1 of FNAF 1, meaning that whoever's in that bedroom has heard the recording as a security guard. We also know that Mike has seen the nightmare animatronics based on his drawings in the security logbook. So overall, there is solid evidence that connects all of FNAFs 1 through 6. You'll also notice how the character encyclopedia doesn't have a page for Mike Afton. This thing has a page for Chocolate Bunny Bonnie, but not Michael. Some tells me they don't want us to confirm how many games he's been in, because that would confirm too much of a theory. In short, this gives us an incredibly compelling and complete narrative. Mike as our protagonist, and William, his father, as our antagonist. Mike accidentally kills his brother in Fredbear's mouth, which begins our story and sets William...
I know this, but YouTube has a new royalty program that's been paying me every single week.
him down his pathway of destruction. Mike is then haunted by the guilt of his past and is looking to make things right across the rest of the game. At Sister Location, he learns what his father's been up to and realizes what he has to do to correct it. After failing to finish the job in FNAF 3, he ultimately helps Henry end it all in FNAF 6. It is great. It is a clean narrative. There is just one problem: timing. Mike's quest can't really start until he's been down to Sister Location, seen Baby, and gotten himself scooped. That's when he finds out about Afton's secret life. It's also when he's gonna start to smell, because, you know, he's a walking, talking, rotting corpse. And we know that he's not going down into the bunker until the Funtime animatronics have been made, Freddy's has been closed, and Afton is out of the picture. That all should be happening post-1993, after William is sealed behind a wall. But that then presents us with a few problems. Afton has already dismantled the original animatronics as we see in the FNAF 3 minigames. How are those things getting burned if they're already deconstructed? But more importantly, we see FNAF 2 paycheck with the date 1987. That is way earlier than I think it can be. To be fair, Fritz Smith's pink slip on night 7 doesn't have a date, but it's a bit weird to say that the first few nights are in 1987, and then employee number 3 is hired on years after the restaurant closes. Anyway, just wanted to call that out because I don't have a solid answer for it, and I'd love to see your comments down below. And with that, my friends, this chapter comes to a close. We'll see you on March 25th for the grand finale as we cover the final 3 games in the franchise, and the controversial answers we think solves what those games are trying to tell us. Until then, my Faz heads, remember, even though Afton kinda succeeded in being brought back to life, gotta admit, he's still looking a little bit on the dry, dehydrated side. I suppose 3 fires and being dead for a decade will tend to do that to you. Fortunately, thanks to today's sponsor, AirUp, I think we can help him out with the hydration thing, not the whole burning alive thing. You guys know that I hate drinking plain water. It's just boring. And that then led me to my current crippling Diet Coke addiction. However, AirUp has found a way to harness the power of science to get me to drink more water, which not only do I love in principle, but I can truly say has changed my drinking habits forever. They use these special scent pods that fit directly onto the top of the bottle, and almost as if by magic, it makes the water taste like basically anything you want. How? If you guys have ever watched Food Theory, you've probably heard me say that smell is more important than taste, and that's exactly what AirUp's taken advantage of here. These pods are full of flavorful smells like watermelon,
scent
peach,
pod.
That one's my personal favorite. And by having the pod in front of your nose as you're drinking, it makes your brain think that that's what you're tasting. But in fact, you're just drinking good old H2O. No additives, no preservatives, no sugars, no syrups, no aspartame, no nothing. I love my AirUp, but naturally, when I tell other people about it, they're skeptical, right? It's a weird concept. So I got members of Team Theors to try it for themselves, and they were also blown away by the results. Lee, Amy, and Tom, 3 of our creative directors, they walk around with their AirUp bottles constantly. Lee loves his so much that he even bought one for his brother's wedding present. Tom said that the orange vanilla swirl flavor reminded him of ice creams that he used to eat as a kid, which sounds way more exciting than just plain old water. And the great thing is, if you aren't like me and you just want some good old-fashioned water every once in a while, you just drop the flavor pod down away from your nose, and suddenly you're back to drinking out of a regular water bottle. The team and I love AirUp. Seriously, there are just so many of these bottles around the office now, and I wouldn't keep saying yes to their sponsorships if I didn't genuinely believe in the quality of the product. So head on down to the description and click the link to purchase your bottle right now. Plus, if you purchase any starter set and use the code FREEFAVE5, you'll receive 1 free Favorite 5 variety pack. That's gonna get you 5 one-pod packs of orange vanilla, raspberry lemon, peach, watermelon, and again, my personal favorite, wild berry. That way you get a good sample of a lot of different flavors, and you can find the one that's perfect for your tasting enjoyment. Sadly, there's no burning metal or remnant flavors for Afton to enjoy, but I'm sure the others will do the trick. Strikes me as a raspberry lemon kind of guy. So once again, head on down to the description, get yourself a starter pack, and remember to use the code FREEFAVE5. That is...
As an entrepreneur, as a creator, I'm 24/7 on the go all the time. Shopify makes it very easy to be connected with my store. My name is Chef Jamoke Jackson.
My name is
Mr. Fantastic. It's literally took me a day to get up and running. I can take a picture, write a description, upload it, and I can have our new product in the store in under 5 minutes. Start your online store today, powered by Shopify.
Are you serious about growing on YouTube or not?
I
and
want
how come
to
you haven't
throw
gotten into
you
my free
out
course? I
just
know that you
like a
watch my content, but you have
broken
not gotten my free
TV.
course yet. It's gonna tell you when.
Hello,
Last
Internet.
one, chat.
Welcome to Game Theory and the final part of my FNAF timeline, where today we're bringing our story to a close by talking about the most complicated and controversial part of the timeline, the part that I've been dreading most of all, the end. The moment where we're finally forced to come to some definitive and difficult answers trying to explain what the heck we were watching in Security Breach. The last 2 episodes have been about death. The death of Afton's family, the deaths of multiple children, the death of the franchise itself as Mike and Henry figuratively and literally burn it all down. Today's episode, though, and the current end of this franchise, is instead all about rebirth, the return of old characters in new forms, and the controversial rebirth of a franchise entering the next era of its story. But before we hop into the timeline, due to scheduling conflicts, I won't be able to have any live talkback after this episode. I know, I promised one, I was really excited about it, but I just couldn't make it work with my schedule and all the other guests' schedules. That said, I still do plan on doing one over the coming weeks with special guests. Just make sure that you're subscribed and either have all notifications turned on, or you're just watching our community tab for the announcement as to when that's gonna happen. And now, without any further ado, we finally reach the end and a new beginning to our story.
Post purple guy.
Fazbear Entertainment is dead.
There is no need for you to return to work next week, as Fazbear Entertainment is no longer a corporate entity.
All debts had been paid, all assets redistributed. The company was outright dissolved. Even the memories of the horrors that had happened there started to fade away in the public consciousness. The people were gone too. William was dead. Henry was gone. A whole generation of young Emilys and Aftons had lost their lives to the horrors of the pizzeria. All of them collateral damage to the man in the bunny suit. Everyone the company had ever touched was dead and gone. Well, all except one.
Pay your child support, you deadbeats! I'm keeping the diamond ring. I also set the house on fire!
Clara Afton. She'd been there in the early days, back when things with William were good. They'd had the perfect home, a thriving business, the ideal family. But shortly after their youngest son died, things started to change. William had become distant, lost in his work, obsessive. She had watched him change from this irritatingly brilliant man that she had fallen in love with to a drunken monster struggling to hold himself together. And despite her trying to reach out to him in those desperate days, he was just too far gone.
No, not this cigar. No, dude, no. This thing's terrifying, bro.
Admit it, you wanted to let me in.
For her sake, she had to leave the relationship, and from there she largely faded into obscurity. A mystery from William's past, a footnote in his history, and that was fine for her. She wanted to leave that part of her life behind. She tried to move forward, never wanting to hear the name Freddy Fazbear again. A time defined by mistakes and broken promises. But then, the paperwork started to arrive. As Fazbear Entertainment began to close as a corporate entity, suddenly her mail was flooded with notifications, requests, obligations. She had been there since the beginning, helping William in the early days of his business. And now, as a shareholder and sole living member of the Afton family, all copyrights and trademarks of both Afton Robotics and Fazbear Entertainment passed on to her. Memories of this past life that she had long left behind. Looking at the tracks, the memos, she felt old wounds begin to reopen. The regrets of a happy family that had been torn away from her. William had always been brilliant. That's what had attracted her to him in the first place. But he'd also been too blinded by obsession and pride. He was too jealous, too petty, too unable to actually see a bigger picture. But now, holding the paperwork that contained decades of heartbreak and trauma, she realized it was her turn. She was holding the power. This was her chance. And one thought resonated in her head. I will put them back together. I will put them all back together. She would be the one to rebuild this family. To rebuild the pieces of that shattered life. To reclaim the kids that Fazbear had stolen from her. But how? Looking at William's work laid out before her, she knew that he had been onto something. Collecting Remnant, robotic humanoids, digital conscience transference. The pieces were all in place. They were just scattered, fragmented. It was almost like there were too many ideas going in too many different directions. It was such an important idea that she reiterated that point to herself. There were too many ideas going in too many different directions. That said, there had to be a way to save it all. She just needed to put it all back together. But how? To rebuild her family, she would first need to rebuild the franchise that had stolen them away from her. With ownership over the characters, their licenses, the technology patents, and the Fazbear name, she converted the corporation back to an LLC, a structure for smaller businesses that are usually family-owned. The irony was fitting. From there, she would need remnant, and lots of it. Remnant was the key. Clearly, in the later years of his life, William had been using Circus Babies Entertainment and Rentals as a remnant farm, sending robots to kids' birthday parties in the hopes of nabbing bits of the stuff here and there. But clearly, it wasn't enough. He had, what, like 4, maybe 5 animatronics going out every week? No. It was a decent idea.
In Albion, no matter where you go or what you do, your mount will accompany you on your journey. Perhaps you'll pick the ox.
But to get the remnant they required, it needed scale. Dozens, hundreds of animatronics all out there, all gathering remnant from unsuspecting customers. But to do that would require help, something William would never ask for. William had kept everything in-house. His obsession with control limited him. Clara, though, she wasn't nearly that precious. A plan like this required partners, people outside of Fazbear to do the heavy lifting. So she contacted a mid-sized delivery company, DLZ Shipping Solutions, to help build replicas of all the original animatronics. And with meal delivery apps being all the rage, why not an animatronic delivery service? Order one to celebrate your birthday, your Halloween party. How about a 4th of July picnic? We'll invite Liberty Chica and 4th of July Freddy on over. She would make sure that they made skins for every occasion. Chocolate Bonnies for Easter, Shamrock Freddies for St. Patrick's Day, Dia de los Muertos Chicas. And thus, the Fazbear Funtime service was born.
That's right. With the Fazbear Funtime service,
alone
again. You'll always have someone watching your back.
Was it ridiculous? Absolutely. Was it a sellout? No doubt. It was exactly the sort of thing that William would have hated, and it needed to be done to get enough remnant. Normally, the novelty of ordering an animatronic wore off after like, what, 1, maybe 2 times? But with new skins for new holidays, suddenly you had yourself an animatronic perfect for every occasion. It would keep people hooked. It would keep them ordering the latest and greatest that Fazbear Entertainment LLC had to offer. And all the while, they'd be collecting and returning the remnant back to her. In a word, it was brilliant. There was just one problem with it. No one trusted the Fazbear name. The company's brand was still mud in the public eye. No one would want to hire animatronics from the restaurant franchise known for murdering children. Nothing kills a party quite like the threat of death, you know. So she needed to find a way to discredit the stories that had come before. She needed to win back the public's affections, reactivate some nostalgia for the spooky stories of their childhoods. She needed a game. Multiple games, in fact.
They lied to us. They lied to all of us. They told us that the whole point of this VR game was to undo the bad PR done by a rogue indie game developer. But that's not true at all. Those indie games were designed to conceal and make light of what happened. This isn't just an attempt to rebrand. It's an elaborate cover-up.
Struggling game developers were a dime a dozen online, most working on their magnum opus between shifts at the Dollar General. So she found one. Steve just picked him out of obscurity. The right mix of desperate and doofus willing to say and do anything for a couple extra bucks. And he fell right in line, as expected, delivering stupid little things with dumb generic names like Mangle's Quest, Balloon Boy's Air Adventure, Five Nights at Freddy's. Bad gameplay with even worse graphics, but hey, they got the job done. People were suddenly talking about the clues inside of these things, searching for the hidden lore. They were actively making jokes about dead kids at pizzerias. Her husband's twisted history of serial murder had suddenly been reduced to a mere Nancy Drew mystery to be solved. The plan had worked. Freddy Fazbear's was suddenly more popular than ever. Things were going shockingly well. Her takeover and reboot of the franchise was full and complete. Suddenly infused with cash, she built the largest, most ambitious project yet, the Mega Pizzaplex.
Mega Pizzaplex. More like
small scale. He was careful to a fault. Not her, though. She knew that this latest project needed to be big. It needed to be flashy. It needed to be a palace for children. A place that got people talking and checking out the latest in Fazbear products. So with a steady supply of remnant flowing in, it was finally time. The stage was set. It was time to get to her real goal, literally rebuilding a family. March 2035. The first was obvious. Crying child, her little boy, the one that was the first to get ripped away from her. She'd seen down in his bunker that William had gotten very close to replicating artificial humans using animatronic technology, and so that's exactly what she would do. Rebuild her boy from the ground up using robotic parts. His favorite striped shirt, even down to small details that no one would notice, like the band-aid on his left knee. William's research had even found ways of making animatronics that could bleed
talk about Gregory,
food, making them virtually indistinguishable from a typical human. He would never never have any idea of what he actually was unless he was explicitly told. The only things that could possibly ruin the illusion were any overrides to his internal systems. If something were to, say, interfere with the cameras that he had in his eyes, or cause some sort of a core reboot to his hard drive, or x-ray his metallic bones, then yeah, he would be exposed. But otherwise, to the outside world, he was just your typical, normal human boy. She worked down in the bowels of the Pizzaplex, giving him life, but it was one thing to build him. It was another to help him remember his identity. He died so young, so early in their history that there was no preserved memories for him. No documentation that she could just download into his digital brain. So bit by bit, she trained him, forcing him to remember who he was. In a corner of the room, she even made a makeshift dinner table, a reminder of their happier days. The family recreated 2 brothers, a sister, a father, and the mother at the head of the table. The one in charge, the one in command, the one bringing all of this to fruition. But his progress was admittedly slower than she would have liked. At first, he could only communicate through simple ones and zeros, then rudimentary drawings and crude letters. But bit by bit, images of his past life started to come through. Balloons, colors, houses, bears and faces, birthday parties. All for me. Gregory was alive. As the robot boy embraced her, she felt that she hadn't in decades. This was the joy that she'd been working towards. This was what...
Bro. Bro.
It was all for her son, back in her arms again. The plan was working. She had to keep going. Next was William. If the family was truly going to be put together, she would need him. And she knew exactly where he was, in the ruins of that old Freddy Fazbear's pizza place where Henry had trapped him. In fact, that's specifically why she insisted on building the Pizzaplex there over the sinkhole. It's the best place to hide what her true intentions were with the entire operation. Digging through the wreckage, she found him. He was right where she thought he'd be. Seeing the putrid shell of the Springtrap suit, though, was not something she was prepared for. The rotting corpse of William Afton was disgusting. Scorched flesh fused into the fur lining. Hollow black sockets where eyes once were. A smell that reeked of burned carbon and bloody iron. He was no longer flesh. He was just the tangled sinews of a creature that was once called human. How far this brilliant man had fallen. It was clear that her work was cut out for her on this one. Afton was practically lifeless. The man may not have been able to die, but he was about as close as you could come. And his body would need a lot of reconstruction. Replacement arms and endoskeleton reinforcements were the top priority. Maybe pulled from their new line of glam rock animatronics. She'd have to see if they had any spare Bonnie parts lying around that they could steal. In the meantime, though, she threw the husk that was once her husband into a life support pod infused with aerosolized remnant to help keep him stable. But more important than recovering his body was recovering his mind. In his current state, he was comatose, an empty shell. Severe brain damage starts at temperatures over 108 degrees Fahrenheit. 42 degrees Celsius, and years of repeated fires had burned his brain to goo. Gone was the brilliant, frustrating mind that had drawn her to him in the first place. But she had a plan. Unlike her darling boy Gregory, Afton had found ways to record his consciousness. Fundamentally, the brain is only a series of electrical connections after all, so why couldn't you replicate that in the form of a standard circuit board? In essence, you could create a digital consciousness. And one thing she knew about William, he was nothing if not cautious. A planner. Someone who had backup plans to his backup plans. And sure enough, there it was, buried in piles of old animatronic CPUs, a record of Afton himself. But she needed someone to test it.
Someone was definitely here during the night. It had to have been the client. I mean, they sent us that stuff in the first place with no explanation, told us to scan it, said it would expedite the process so we wouldn't need to program any pathfinding ourselves.
Unlike the other games that she'd paid to have made in the past, this one had a different purpose. This wasn't about PR, it was about getting William back up and running, spreading his virus to the masses.
You acknowledge that Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for accidental digital consciousness transference, real-world manifestations of digital characters.
She hired a new developer, Silver Parasol Games, to scan the boards and bring her husband into the system. And because of the immersive nature of VR, William's consciousness would be able to merge with the player, giving him a new body, a new agency. There was just one complication. Afton's hold wasn't as powerful as she had hoped. He wasn't able to gain complete control. The first trial run, Jeremy, was so desperate to escape from his grasp that he sliced his own face off with a paper shredder. Messy. Afton's followers were reluctant, to say the least. But it was the second attempt that looked like it had the potential to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Enter Vanessa. Mrs. Afton wanted a surrogate daughter. Her darling Elizabeth would have been a young woman at this point if she had lived. And Clara wanted someone who wasn't Elizabeth but could be just like her. Could she have just rebuilt her like Gregory? Sure, but she decided against it because she wanted an actual human mother-daughter connection. Well, that, and it would be redundant and narratively unsatisfying to have two robot kids in the same family. What can she say? William had put a lot of tools on the table for her to use, and she was planning on using them all. Plus, Elizabeth had always been so loyal to Daddy. It was time to give her a second chance, a true choice. And Vanessa seemed to be the perfect candidate to fill the role.
Your dad's name was Bill? Your dad didn't play fair, did he? He used to make your mum look bad in court. He manipulated you. I know your mum after she lost the custody case. I was supposed to be a good girl.
She started as a QA tester at Silver Parasol Games, a VR game development company that was part of her plan to bring back William. But more importantly, Vanessa checked all the correct boxes. Right age, blonde, green eyes with a fondness for flowers and the outdoors. In many ways, it was her daughter all over again. Except it wasn't just looks and personality. What really mattered was Vanessa's mind. Underconfident, coming from a broken home, motherless, able to be manipulated. Yes, she would do nicely. She would be the one to say, dear old Daddy, just as the real Elizabeth would have wanted.
I will make you proud, Daddy.
While testing the VR game, William's digital consciousness merged with Vanessa. Oh sure, she fought, fragmenting Afton's code into a series of tapes hidden across the game, trying to do web searches to regain control over her life, but it wasn't enough. She was weaker than Jeremy. She was a thrall that, despite occasional moments of lucidity, had to obey. And with Vanessa, it was a 2-for-1 deal. She was getting a daughter back, while also bringing her husband one step closer to reactivation. She just had to make sure that Vanessa was headed the right way.
A lot of people don't know this.
Bro, I
If you
swear.
have a YouTube app on your phone, you could be using it to make a full-time passive income without...
The reborn Gregory was an expert hacker, part of the benefits of being
Bobby
a
does.
and a robot. So Clara had him keeping tabs on Vanessa, hacking into her emails and trailing her therapy sessions to ensure the future Elizabeth was falling in line. If any of the therapists started to ask too many questions, they were promptly dismissed from their positions. And while Gregory kept tabs on Vanessa's personal life, Mrs. Afton made sure to clear a path for her professionally. With Silver Parasol's collapse at the hands of the Anomaly, she then had the possessed Vanessa bring the contaminated circuit boards to DLZ shipping and the Fazbear Funtime service. More glitches, more Remnant, more Afton. But it was her last move that was the best. In a true masterpiece of poetry, she brought Vanessa over to be Chief Security Officer at the Pizzaplex. A true tradition to don the hat and badge, and all it took was a recommendation from the top as well as some emails marked for deletion. Sure, Vanessa didn't have relevant experience for the job, but when it comes directly from the CEO, does it really matter? Husband, son, daughter. A corpse, a robot, a human. All that was left was Michael. Poor, troubled Michael. The boy that killed her youngest. The one that would spend years trying to make his guilty conscience right again. A self-professed protector. While she knew she needed him to complete the family, something told her that the problem had already solved itself. Something had shifted when using Glamrock Freddy to excavate the buried pizza place.
I have been here before. I found myself for the first time when I cleared the path. I have changed. My friends are here, but I can protect you. I am not me.
Maybe it was the remnant that had coursed through Michael's veins. Maybe it was the spirit of Michael living on as a protector. But he was there, somewhere inside of Glamrock Freddy. She could feel it. Just like that, she'd won. She'd done it. Sure, there were still some kinks to work out, some final brainwashing of Vanessa, some rehabilitation of William, but they were there. Finally, all together again under one roof. The Aftons reunited.
Meat
a
Farm.
happy ending.
Yo.
That's how it could have ended. That's how it should have ended. Had it not been for a few unanticipated developments. For one, something was just wrong with the Pizzaplex. Almost as if the entire building was haunted, possessed. Puppet plushies hiding on ceilings, behind crates, places that they had no earthly way of belonging. Staff bots with greasy tears down their eyes acting like they were being puppeteered by some sort of a nightmare. Even their sounds had the echo of nightmares long past. It was as though a guardian spirit of the past refused to move on.
Listen closely, it's quiet, but
It was as though a guardian spirit of the past refused to move on. As long as her husband was around, it too would linger. Only now, it wasn't just in one body, but it was in the essence of the building itself. She had seen stories of houses built on burial grounds getting possessed by angry spirits, but she'd never assumed that it could be real. Then again, in a world of living spirit metal and mind-controlling glitches, who was she to be so judgmental? The whole thing was ridiculous. Why would this be the line that she refused to cross? After all, the Pizzaplex was built over the burial ground of angry spirits, but it was the power cords that finally convinced her that something was wrong. Suddenly, these cords were striped black and white, like the security puppet from generations ago. The very foundations, materials and wires that constituted it were rebelling against her, against the Aftons, against the quest to bring them all together again. And it was being helped by something else, something slithering through the building. Maybe they were connected, she couldn't be sure, but a blob of living wires could be heard oozing through the walls, stealing pieces and parts of the old animatronics showcased in Rockstar Row. She could only assume that it was a byproduct of all the remnant they'd been collecting. From Afton's testing, she knew that both light and dark remnant existed, one of positive emotions and the other created from anguish, anger, agony. Perhaps this thing was an amalgamation of all the darkest parts of the pizzeria's history, a collection of the hatred still housed inside these defunct endoskeletons and exosuits. As long as it was left alone, it seemed to be harmless. But if any Afton outside of Michael got too close, it would lash out wildly. Even young Gregory, looking to punish the family that had been complicit in its horrible creation. Little did she know, though, that Gregory should have been her biggest concern, that bringing the family together would have some unforeseen consequences. Gregory was normally the goodest of boys. She had literally built him that way. But lately, he'd been disappearing more and more often, disobeying her orders. Requests. She knew that he loved playing on the arcade machines once the Pizzaplex closed, being so good as to top the leaderboard on practically all of them. But lately, he was nowhere to be found. She suspected his absence had to do with Glamrock Freddy's failed performance the other night, when he malfunctioned live on stage. Almost as though the core programming of Freddy responded to seeing this rebuilt small boy. Almost like it awakened something inside of him. She'd have to make sure that Vanessa was on the lookout for him. But she'd soon come to learn that Vanessa wasn't enough. Whether it was the influence of the nightmare puppet or a reawakened hatred of animatronics seated deep in Gregory's code, something had caused him to rebel, to rip apart each animatronic in the Pizzaplex. This boy was tearing down the empire that she'd so painstakingly built, freeing Vanessa from her mind control, destroying the remains of Afton in the basement, setting Glamrock Freddy loose as her awakened hatred of animatronics seated deep
this is sick, bro.
code,
It's so cool.
caused him to rebel, to rip apart each animatronic in the Pizzaplex. Bit by bit, this boy was tearing down the empire that she'd so painstakingly built, freeing Vanessa from her mind control, destroying the remains of Afton in the basement, setting Glamrock Freddy loose. As
Why would you do that?
Created world crumbled around her one more time. She began
Why
to
would
plot
you?
her revenge. She would have to bring them all to ruin. And there you
Why
have
would
it,
you
my
do
friends.
that?
Nearly a decade in the making, my FNAF timeline for where the franchise is here in 2023. The year of Fazbear Frights, by the way. As always, it wouldn't be right for me to finish without going over some of the more controversial takes that I just handed out. I think we can all agree that this part of the timeline was always going to be the hardest. So let me just break down some of the major points. First of all,
Right, let's film this on the Zenfone. I actually have
Bro.
some news. So you might have heard me talking about the Opera browser.
the biggest swing of this episode, and obviously the one that everything else rests on, Mrs. Afton being the CEO of Fazbear Entertainment LLC. Here's why I took this route. Now, first and foremost, the head of Fazbear Entertainment is the single biggest mystery that we're meant to solve at this point in the lore. The Ultimate Guide brings it up repeatedly. Who's running the show? Who is okaying these decisions? And in the security breach memos, we get multiple mentions of someone manipulating things from the top down. Whoever this is, they are the person driving forward every other facet of late-stage FNAF lore here. They're the puppet master who's hiring the indie dev. They're the ones relaunching the brand, building the Pizzaplex over the burial ground. So everything at the end of the timeline relies on this one singular answer. Now, as I see it, there are two possibilities here. One, an adult robot Elizabeth, like we see older versions of robot kids in the fourth closet, or Mrs. Afton. Could it be someone completely new to the franchise? Absolutely yes, but in a game with so many returning faces and repeating themes, it would be pretty random and arbitrary. So, between these two girl bosses, who then would it it be?
Girl boss.
Always wants to please her daddy,
Girl
so she'd
boss.
be most likely wanting to bring him to life. But then, what's
Girl
Vanessa's
boss.
role in all of this? Vanessa is clearly
wait,
meant to
wait.
be parallel for Elizabeth. Same hair, same eyes, similar backstories. But if the main goal is getting the Afton family back together, which seems to clearly be the case in Security Breach, then there's no need for Vanessa to be involved at all. We already have Elizabeth running the show. It would also mean that we suddenly have 2 robot kids running around, which feels narratively repetitive and quite frankly kind of dumb. Now look at Mrs. Afton. We know next to nothing about her outside of any clues that we can get from Immortal and the Restless and the lore song. But what her being head of Fazbear does is make every other piece of the lore fit. Suddenly, you can have one of every other type of character. One robot kid in Gregory, one brainwashed human in Elizabeth/Vanessa, one OG corpse in William, and one possessed animatronic in Mike. Narratively, it makes everything else cleaner. Legally, it's also the option that makes the most sense. As I call out in my narrative, she'd likely have some stake in the original company and all of its assets. So as Fazbear folds as a company, I'd suspect a lot of it would return back to her. But there was one clue that really sold me on this particular direction, and that was this right here, in the Post-it room. The big lore central of Security Breach, a dinner table scene with the whole family, including the mother. And not only is she there, she is at the head of that table, the position of highest honor and responsibility. She is the one in charge, with William being relegated off to the side. That one scene shows that we have to include Mom in there somewhere, and the only place it makes sense for her to be is at the top. Now, there is one big delay in my interpretation of all this. The Ultimate Guide really seems to point out that the head of Fazbear doesn't want the glitch trap virus to spread. They call out one particular email in Fnaf AR where the legal team calls a cease and desist to all action about scanning the circuit boards. And even in Fnaf VR, we're told that the circuit boards get stolen back by the client, presumably once they realize what danger is on there, trying to stop glitch trap before he spreads and gets out of hand. Here's the problem with that though. If the head of Fazbear doesn't want Afton to rise again, why'd they restart the company in the first place? Why'd they build over the FNAF 6 pizzeria? Why'd they go through an elaborate cover-up to make the possessed Vanessa an important part of the company? Just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It would be the most inconsistent series of actions ever, but I did want to call attention to it since it seems to be the route that the official guide is trying to steer us towards. Moving on to minor point number 1, the Five Nights at Freddy's game is made by the Rogue indie developer. Here's the thing, VR opens with this line.
That's why we have recreated many of these completely fictitious scenarios, lies that you've been fed over the last several years, into a hilarious VR game.
It's recreating the lies told to you by the indie developer, and since Help Wanted has direct recreations of FNAFs 1 through 3, it means the games must be part of the fabrications that this developer made up. Also, all of this is heavily implied in the story of the same name, Help Wanted and Tales of the Pizzaplex, hence FNAF 1 through 3, canon games within the lore of the series. Big swing number 2, the elephant, or ghost in the room, Charlie infecting the Pizzaplex. John from the channel FNAF has made some great findings about Charlie's influence over the Pizzaplex. The cables that look like the striped arms of the puppet, the Nightmarion plushies that you find hidden across the Pizzaplex in weird places, the staff bots with creepy smiles and in your dreams written on the front. All of these things scream puppets. Plus, the puppet mask not having tears in the blob seems to imply that Charlie's spirit exists elsewhere. She is still in play, and she has an important role, especially in Gregory's Post-it room. The doors to the Post-it room in the game's code are called Charlie doors, and inside we see a bunch of nightmare staff bot heads. Suspicious, to say the least. The channel ID's Fantasy did a great theory looking at the Post-it notes, concluding that the crying child / Gregory isn't alone in this room, but rather might be communicating with someone. A spirit, Charlie. Charlie's spirit seems to have pulled a poltergeist. Instead of controlling one thing, she's affecting a lot of little details, foundational elements of the Pizzaplex. And this isn't the first time that we've seen this in the franchise either. We've seen spirits communicating with people through physical writing in the survival logbook. So we know that this is an established means of spirit communication within this franchise. And I suspect that to some extent it might be Charlie's influence making Gregory go hate.
Bro, I swear, these freaking ads, bro. The game's almost over.
Which brings me then to my final and probably biggest controversy in recent FNAF history, Gregory as Patient 46, the evil robot mastermind. Now, I know when I first came out with this theory a year ago, people were mad. But here's the thing, you don't have to take my evidence points for it anymore. The recent Tales from the Pizzaplex story, GGY, basically goes and just outright proves it. In GGY, we find out about a boy named Gregory who's getting all the high scores in the Pizzaplex arcade machines. When therapists start to go missing, it's confirmed that GGY is the one that's working to bump them off. And when animatronics start getting corrupted by a mysterious glitch, GGY's letters are found inside the code. He even chooses the code name Dr. Rabbit, for crying out loud. But obviously, by the time of security breach, Gregory is working against Burn Trap, Vanessa, and the animatronics. Why? How? Well, it's not really clear. I tend to believe that something must have happened to cause him to either lose his memory or be reset in some way. Maybe it was Charlie talking to him in his post-it room. Maybe he hit his head. Maybe it was the connection that he made with Mike on stage in Glamrock Freddy. Not exactly sure, and I don't think we have enough clues to solve it. But it makes sense from a story perspective. I'd start off evil on Afton's side, and then switch to trying to destroy him and not knowing who he is in security breach. And with that, my friends, I'm wrapping this thing up. Congratulations, we are on page 40. 22,000 words of
God!
I just wrote myself a Tales of the Pizzaplex short story. Have I answered everything? No. Does everything fit cleanly? No. But does it feel like the best and most cohesive narrative for all these characters that addresses most of the evidence we're given? Yeah. For me, honestly, it really does. And let's be honest with ourselves, the DLC will probably come out later this year and prove me completely wrong. Wouldn't be the first time. Then comes the movie, whatever. My descent into madness continues. But regardless, I am so proud of this. This was a massive undertaking. And I'm so proud of our editors who have just destroyed the editing across all 4 of these installments. You guys are the best. Thank you for pushing through 20+ minute uploads. You are unreal and your talent is unrivaled. I'm so lucky to work with you guys every single day. And like I mentioned before, keep an eye on the channel for an announcement regarding a talkback live stream with some special guests. Was I right? Was I wrong? I want to hear your feedback. That one's coming up soon. And with that, my friends, we can finally rest. I can leave the demon to its demons with one final reminder that it was all just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
Game theory. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory. That is exactly an hour, I think. If you guys like, if you guys like Fnaf lore, want to see me react to, I don't have more videos on this. So like and subscribe and peace. See you guys in the next one.